The fastest way to build an alternative to American financial power was not a Chinese master plan. It was American foreign policy. Let that sit for a second, because over the next few minutes, you're going to watch it happen. Not in theory, not in speculation. In documented sequences where Washington announces a threat, and within weeks, sometimes days, the targeted country signs an agreement with Beijing, joins a BRICS payment system, or reopens diplomatic channels that had frozen for years. The pattern repeats across continents. The irony is so consistent it stops being ironic and starts looking like a system working exactly as designed. Just not the system America intended. I'm Malcolm, and today's present will be tomorrow's history, so why not we talk about it today? Welcome to History Meets Economics. What you are about to see is not a single event. It is a pattern. 5 countries, 5 American threats, 5 responses that accelerated the exact outcome Washington was trying to prevent. We are going to go case by case, and in each one, you will hear Washington's logic first, then you will see what the recipient country did in response. Not what they said, what they did. Because in geopolitics, signing ceremonies matter more than press conferences. And every signing ceremony you are about to hear happened after an American tariff threat, not before. Case 1. India. August 2025. Let's be in Washington's shoes for a minute. India has been buying Russian oil despite sanctions. America spent 2 decades building India as a strategic partner, a democratic counterweight to China, a key player in the Indo-Pacific strategy, a country that shares concerns about Beijing's territorial ambitions. The relationship was working. Joint military exercises, intelligence sharing, billions in defense contracts. Then Russia invaded Ukraine, and India kept buying Russian crude because it was cheap and India's economy needed it. Washington saw this as betrayal. The response was a 50% tariff on Indian imports, set to take effect in late August 2025, explicitly designed to punish India for its energy purchases from Moscow. Now here is the view from New Delhi. America is demanding India stop buying oil from Russia, a country India has had defense and energy ties with since the Cold War, while simultaneously inviting ExxonMobil back into Russian oil projects. The double standard was noted. Publicly. Then the tariff lands. 50%? One of the highest rates America imposed on any country. And Indian officials asked a reasonable question. If we are such close strategic partners, why are we being treated worse than competitors? The response came fast. On August 31st, 2025, Prime Minister Narendra Modi flew to Tianjin, China, his first visit to China in 7 years. An Indian Prime Minister, who had spent years managing tensions with Beijing over a disputed border, whose soldiers had clashed with Chinese forces in the Himalayas as recently as 2020, stepping off a plane in northern China for a bilateral summit with Xi Jinping. This was not a quiet diplomatic meeting. This was a state visit. Flags, cameras, a joint statement on resuming cooperation. And then the follow-through. In October 2025, the first direct commercial flight between India and China in over 5 years took off from Kolkata to Guangzhou. Washington built a partnership over 25 years. A tariff threat unraveled it in 3 weeks. That is not strategy. That is handing your competitor a win they did not even have to ask for. Case 2. Brazil. June 2025. The view from Washington. Brazil is hosting the 2025 BRICS Summit in Rio. President Lula has been vocal about reducing reliance on the dollar, about creating a common BRICS currency, about building financial independence for the global south. Brazil is also prosecuting Jair Bolsonaro, the former president and a Trump ally, for attempting to overturn the 2022 election. Washington sees an opportunity to pressure both fronts. The U.S. imposes tariffs as high as 50% on Brazilian imports, and, in a move that diplomatic protocol does not usually allow, sanctions a sitting Brazilian Supreme Court Justice, Alexandre de Moraes, the man leading the Bolsonaro prosecution. Now the view from Brasilia. America just sanctioned a member of our judiciary. Not a corrupt official, not a general. A judge enforcing the law against an attempted coup. The perception in Brazil was immediate and visceral. This is not diplomacy. This is interference. Lula's foreign policy advisor called it unacceptable blackmail. And then Brazil did what Washington and the world apparently did not expect. It doubled down. Within weeks, Brazil and China signed 36 agreements covering economic cooperation, technology transfer, and trade financing. China already accounted for 28% of Brazilian foreign trade. And now that number began climbing. Brazilian agricultural exports, soybeans, beef, coffee, started shifting yuan-denominated contracts. not in theory, in signed deals with delivery schedules. And here's something I ponder over. America threatened the country hosting the BRICS summit and then acted surprised when that country strengthened its BRICS commitments. If you wanted to recruit Brazil into deeper integration with Beijing, threatening their Supreme Court while they were chairing a bloc designed to counter Western dominance was a decent strategy. Unfortunately for Washington, that was not the goal. Case 3. Africa. March 2025. The view from Washington. Foreign aid is expensive. USAID has been operating in Africa for decades, funding health programs, education, infrastructure, HIV/AIDS treatment through PEPFAR. In 2024 alone, nearly $13 billion went to African countries. But aid comes with conditions. Political reforms, governance standards, votes at the UN that align with American interests. In March 2025, the Trump administration announced it would gradually end USAID operations. The savings would go back to the American budget. The idea is noble. More money available to American taxpayers. The logic: why fund countries that vote against us? But here is what USAID actually was, and this is the part the budget spreadsheets miss. It was not charity. It was the subscription service for political loyalty. You funded a government's health sector, and that government became dependent on your continued funding. If they voted the wrong way at the UN, the funding could be reconsidered. It was soft power with a hard edge, and when Trump cut it, he did not just cut the money, he cut the dependency. He freed dozens of African governments from the conditions they had resented for years. In June 2025, 3 months after USAID cuts were announced, China offered a zero-tariff trade policy to 53 out of 54 African nations. Not loans with conditions, not aid with governance requirements, tariff-free access to the world's second largest economy. And the timing was surgical. As American funding disappeared, Chinese trade terms improved. The public numbers tell you everything you need to know. 52 out of 54 African countries now trade more with China than with the United States. A 2025 Afrobarometer poll showed that 60% of Africans viewed Chinese influence positively, compared to 53% for America. Think about that for a moment. The country that spent $13 billion a year on the continent is now less popular than the country that built the roads without asking how you run your elections. From 2000 to 2023, Chinese lenders made 1,306 loan deals worth $182 billion with 49 African governments. While Washington was cutting aid and banning visas, Beijing was signing port contracts and railway deals. America left. China stayed. The vacuum filled itself. Rather quickly, I must add. Case 4. Vietnam. June 2025. The view from Washington. Vietnam has become a manufacturing hub, especially as companies diversify supply chains away from China. But Vietnamese exports to America carry a 46% tariff rate, one of the highest in the world. The American government threatened to keep it there unless Vietnam cut its trade surplus with the United States and distanced itself from China. The goal was to pull Vietnam closer into the American economic orbit while keeping it out of Beijing's, but this is the way Hanoi viewed this. We have a 1,200-kilometer border with China. Our entire history is managing that relationship. America is an important trade partner. But America is also an ocean away, and its tariff threats change with every administration. China is next door forever. So Vietnam did something that Washington apparently did not anticipate. It negotiated on both fronts simultaneously. In June 2025, Vietnam was granted BRICS partner country status. Not full membership yet. Partner status, which allows participation in BRICS initiatives without full commitments. And at the exact same time, Vietnam negotiated a trade deal with the United States that cut its tariffs from 46% to 20%. Hanoi shook hands with Washington and Beijing in the same week. It was not choosing sides. It was expanding options. And BRICS gave it leverage in the American negotiation. Think about the sequence. America threatened tariffs to pull Vietnam away from China. Vietnam responded by joining a China-led bloc, which gave it enough leverage to negotiate better American terms. Washington wanted compliance. It got diversification. And the pattern spread. Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, all Asian nations watching Vietnam's success, began exploring closer BRICS ties themselves. One threat. 4 responses. Case 5. Saudi Arabia, 2023 to present. This one needs context because it involves the oldest and most important financial relationship America built after World War II. In 1974, the United States and Saudi Arabia made a deal. Saudi Arabia would price its oil exclusively in dollars and invest its oil revenue in U.S. Treasury bonds. In exchange, America would provide military protection, weapons, and security guarantees. That deal, the petrodollar system, locked the entire world into needing dollars to buy oil. It was the foundation of dollar dominance for 50 years. The view from Washington in the 2020s. Saudi Arabia is drifting. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has been courting China, Russia, and Iran. The Saudis are negotiating with Beijing on everything from defense technology to currency swaps. The Biden administration pressured Riyadh to increase oil production to bring down prices. Trump has continued the pressure, expecting the Saudis to stay within American influence as they have for half a century. But the view from Riyadh is, we have been anchoring the petrodollar system since 1974. We priced our oil in dollars when it benefited both sides. But the world has changed. China is now our largest oil customer. Why should we invoice our largest customer in a third country's currency? In 2023, Saudi Arabia began accepting yuan for oil sales to China. Quietly. No dramatic announcement, just new contracts with Chinese buyers settled in yuan. The deal America built in 1974 started developing cracks in 2023. And every American tariff threat against a BRICS nation reminded Riyadh why having alternatives matters. Now here is what happened while Washington was threatening all of those countries. In October 2024, Russia demonstrated a prototype of BRICS Pay in Moscow, a payment system built on the mobile platforms of member states. Russia's SPFs, China's SIPs and UnionPay, India's UPI, and Brazil's PIX, 4 separate national systems being integrated into a cross-border platform that does not touch SWIFT or dollar clearing. It is not finished. It is not seamless. But it is real, and it is being tested on actual transactions. Russia's SPFS now has 159 foreign participants across 20 countries. Settlements between Russia and BRICS countries in national currencies, yuan, rupee, real, surged from 26 cent to 85% in just 2 years. That is not a marginal shift. That is a system be reshaped. China's SIPS now connects thousands of financial institutions across nearly every continent. It processes tens of trillions of yuan annually. SWIFT opened a Beijing office in 2019, which tells you that even SWIFT understands it needs to cooperate with the alternative rather than pretend it does not exist. The Belt and Road Initiative, China's global infrastructure program, now includes between 146 and 150 countries, 75% of the world's population, over half of global GDP. In 2023 alone, African countries received $21.7 billion in BR1 deals, ports, railways, energy projects. When America cut, you said, the infrastructure China had been building for a decade was already operational. By mid-2025, BRICS had expanded to 20 countries, 10 full members, 10 partners, representing 44% of global GDP and 56% of the world's population. Compare that to the G7, 7 countries, 28% of GDP, and most of them experiencing stagnant or negative growth. And then came the Rio Summit, July 2025. Brazil was hosting. The BRICS nations knew America was watching. They issued a carefully worded final statement that avoided directly criticizing the United States. No attacks, no inflammatory language. Analysts said at the time they probably believed they could fly under Trump's radar. The statement was released on a Friday. The following Monday, Trump announced a 10% tariff threat on any country aligning with BRICS. The moderate approach had failed before it even had a chance to succeed. Lula's response was direct, and I quote, "The world has changed. We don't want an emperor." This is a set of countries that wants to find another way of organizing the world. I think that's why BRICS is making people uncomfortable. Now let's be honest about what is actually working and what is not. Because this is not propaganda, it is analysis. BRICS is not a unified superpower. China represents 70% of BRICS GDP, which means it is not a partnership of equals. It still looks like China with a support group. India and China still have a disputed border. The 2025 Rio Summit failed to issue a joint communique for the first time in BRICS history. There is no common BRICS currency. Experts estimate that a fully functioning alternative to SWIFT or the dollar is probably decades away, if it is achievable at all. But here is what is working. The infrastructure of alternatives exists. BRICS Pay is being tested. CIPS is processing real transactions. Countries are signing oil contracts in yuan. Vietnam joined BRICS and negotiated better terms with America as a result. That is not replacing the dollar. That is reducing dependence on the dollar. And reducing dependence means America can no longer threaten without consequences. That is the shift, not revolution. What does this mean for an ordinary person in Jakarta, Nairobi, or Lima? In the short term, not much changes. Your currency is still probably pegged to the dollar. Your country's debt is still likely denominated in dollars. But if your government now has the option to borrow in yuan, to settle oil purchases in rupees, to access infrastructure financing from the new development bank instead of the IMF, then, slowly, over years, your government has more room to make decisions that benefit you not exactly satisfying. Washington. That is not dramatic, but it is real. The pattern is now visible. America threatens. The threatened country signs an agreement with Beijing or joins a BRICS initiative. America threatens again. Another country joins. The cycle repeats. And every repetition makes the alternative infrastructure stronger, the dollar dependency weaker, and the next country's decision easier. The fastest way to build an alternative to American financial power was not a Chinese master plan. It was American foreign policy. We have now watched it happen 5 times in 5 different countries on 3 different continents in under 18 months. That was fast. And that is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. And the pattern is accelerating, faster than we all thought possible. I'm Malcolm, and this is History Meets Economics. If you think this documentary is wrong, explain where. If you think it's right, explain why. Here's another moment history met economics.